Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the Town Hall on Academics this fall. My name is Stephanie Specchio, and I have the pleasure of serving the college as the Associate Vice President of Communications and Marketing. Today we will have two presenters. To my right is Dr. David Newman, and to my left is Amelia Hoffman. We will be with you today for about an hour and 15 minutes, and we will take questions in two ways. Please feel free to submit your questions via the live chat function on ESF TV YouTube channel, or you may also send questions to my personal email address, which is spelled S as in Sam, A, S as in Sam, P as in Paul, E, C, C, H, at esf.tv. Please know that we will save the chat function today so that we can review the session and look at the questions that we might not have been able to get to in real time. We will try to get to all of them in real time, but in case we don't, we will certainly answer them after the session, and we'll make sure that the answers get posted. Our first presenter today will be Dr. David Newman. He's the college's Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. Provost Newman assumed his current roles in March of 2019. He is the Professor of Forest Resource Economics and Policy in the Department of Forest and Natural Resources Management, and he served as chair of that department for more than a decade. Provost Newman received his undergraduate degree in forest management from the University of California at Berkeley, and he received his master's and PhD in forest resource economics from Duke University. Our second presenter today is Amelia Hoffman. She serves as ESF's Academic Success Coordinator and has been with the college since 2015. Amelia has a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in higher ed administration from Syracuse University, and she is currently working on a second master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, also from SU. Amelia started the college's program to serve students who find themselves on academic probation, and she enjoys helping students achieve their personal academic goals, whatever they might be. Just a reminder, if you have questions, please submit them via the chat function on YouTube, or you can send questions to my email address, which I have posted on in the chat function. But I'll spell it again. It's S as in Sam, A, S as in Sam, P as in Paul, E, C, C, H, at esf.edu. So with no further ado, let's get started. Provost Newman, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today about our plans for academic programs in the fall. I look forward to answering any questions that you might have and try and deal with some of the uncertainty that we've been dealing with now for a while. When we talk about our planning, I want to first start with some background and sort of why we have not been as perhaps forthcoming as many of you would have liked. First off, we just had a number of issues in terms of getting our restart plan going. First, we had to get approval from SUNY. That was a long and arduous process, and really we only finally received approval from SUNY to be moving forward about 2 weeks ago. And so while we have been planning all along, we were pretty much prohibited from giving very clear information out to people about what we were doing. The second thing dealing with our restart was the fundamental relationship we have with Syracuse University. Syracuse is a partner of ours. We have hundreds of students taking courses over at Syracuse University, many students from Syracuse University taking courses over here. So it really became imperative for us in our planning to be taking into account the things that Syracuse University was going to be doing with their schedule. As a result, that had a pretty dramatic impact on our planning with regards to our academic calendar. Next, as we were developing our plans, the impacts of social distancing on our classrooms became very apparent and has a large impact on how we are going to go forward in the fall. Because of a need to maintain social distancing, the capacity of our classrooms has decreased quite a bit. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But that was an important consideration that we had to bring into account. We also wanted to take into account faculty preferences for the teaching modes that they were going to use for their courses. In some ways, one of the positive things that came out of what happened this past spring was that our faculty learned a lot more about delivering of courses online and how to meet students' needs in a way that wouldn't necessarily compromise their education as we changed our modalities. And so to me, it was very important that faculty preferences should play a large role in the decision as to what courses and the way courses would be offered. Finally, we had to think about what were going to be the impacts on enrollment. And right now, the enrollment numbers are really very strong. We're have about 310 freshmen that are set to be coming in the fall, and another 230 or so of transfer students. And so these are numbers that are well within the realm that we've historically been. So these are all very positive aspects, but that influenced what we were going to be doing with regards to the restart. In addition, there were two other factors that have had a lot of importance in what we're doing. First is the refurbishment of Marshall Hall. There was some question over the summer, but we recently had full approval to go ahead with the reconstruction and refurbishment of Marshall Hall. Now that has a couple of implications for us. One, we lose the classrooms, we lose the auditorium as places where people can study, as well as faculty and graduate students and labs that were in Marshall Hall having to be moved around. So we've had a tremendous amount of movement on the campus. The greatest impact from that has been to landscape architecture, which will be moving into a downtown location on Harrison Street for the next 2.5 years. Finally, the budget. This has been a harrowing time for the state of New York. Tax revenues are way down, and that affects us as a state institution. And so while all these other things are going on in terms of trying to deal with the COVID crisis, we're also having to deal with significant shortfalls in budget, which again are going to affect our planning. So with those things there, as we started our planning process, we had a number of priorities with respect to the decision making that we were going to do. The first priority that we made was that we would be a residential campus again. We felt that was important for our students. We felt it was important for the types of programs that we have here at this campus, that we want students to be able to take advantage of as much face-to-face as possible, and we felt that this was an important priority. Second, that we would prioritize the health and welfare of students, faculty, and staff. And so we have gone to fairly heavy extremes, and there will be more town halls that will cover this as to how we're dealing with health and safety of all of our constituents here. Third, that we would have flexibility in our teaching modalities, and that would be determined by the faculty. I was not going to be telling faculty that this is the way that they had to teach. I wanted faculty to be comfortable in how they are teaching. Now, on the positive side, a lot of our faculty, this is the enjoyment that they get, is face-to-face teaching with our students. but they're also cognizant of the health concerns. So we've had to balance that. And so finally, we felt that while we knew that there would be some parts of our programs that would have to be taught online because there would be no way to really house the students, we wanted to put an emphasis on skills training for our face-to-face. So for our lab courses and other types of field courses where possible, we would focus on face-to-face activities. So first, coming out of this was what our calendar is going to look like. If you recall, when you left last spring, the planned start for the campus was going to be August 31st this year. Very early on, Syracuse University made a decision that they would move to an August 24th start date for their classes. And like I said before, given that we have a large number of students taking classes at Syracuse University and their students taking classes with us, we felt that it was necessary for us to have our calendars coincide. So classes will begin on August 24th. Students will start moving into Centennial Hall beginning August 14th, and in some cases even earlier than that for students that are coming from quarantine states. And that classes would end on November 24th, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So it's a 14-week schedule with no breaks. We would not take a break for Labor Day. And in fact, we have to hold 3 weekend class days: Saturday, September 5th, Sunday, October 25th, and Sunday, November 8th will be classes that will, so we can meet our credit hour requirements for accreditation of our program. So coursework would end on November 24th. Students would leave the campus at that time for Thanksgiving break. Reading week would follow Thanksgiving, as well as finals. All of that would be done online, and the fall semester would close on December 9th. So it's a different schedule than what we had planned, but one that we, again, feel prioritizes student health and safety and allows us to get a full semester in, hopefully minimizing negative impacts. So with regards to teaching options, faculty have expressed a strong interest in student interaction, and right now about almost 60% of our courses will have some component of face-to-face to that. So we have right now 17% that are straight face-to-face courses. These are primarily much smaller courses. Then we have what we're calling a flex hybrid approach, in which faculty will likely be dividing their class up, and that half the class can attend in person, and the other half would have to watch the class as it's being live streamed. And we're making significant investments in upgrading our technology to allow for that live streaming from classrooms. And then there's about 32% of our courses that are online. Now, these are primarily large lecture courses, and I'll explain why in a second. And much of our general education courses are going to have a significant component of online. So those are the modalities that we'll be teaching, and so there will be still a significant component of an online practice. But we hope that we will have sufficient face-to-face coursework for students to benefit from it. So why are the large lecture classes going to be taught online? Well, flat out, we don't have space to put a large class together with social distancing. First off, the loss of Marshall Hall meant that we no longer had the auditorium, and we lost classroom space there. So we had already planned to have some of our classes being taught on the Syracuse University campus, and Syracuse University has worked with us very well to allow that to happen. There are going to be classes at 224 Harrison Street for landscape architecture, and that's where the whole department is moving to for the next 2.5 years. But that social distancing reduced class space significantly. For instance, 5 ILIC, which can hold up to 149 people in a classroom in an unconstrained space, is reduced to 29. 146 Baker goes from 131 seats down to 27 seats. And so this huge reduction meant that we just physically couldn't hold a large lecture class together. There's a smaller percentage impact for rooms that have movable chairs, but those rooms that have fixed seating, when you try and bring in 6-foot spacing, create some real problems for us. And so we were forced to basically say for our large lecture courses, in order for them to be done, they will be done online. In addition, we're going to be using Gateway A and B for classes, since we won't be having any on-campus or external activities, so that space becomes available. And that Gateway A and B now will be our largest classroom with 42 seats. That's a big space with just 42 seats in it. So, how will classes be run? So we're going to have a number of safety requirements. Social distancing will be maintained in the classrooms, and masks will be worn in the classroom and around campus if you can't guarantee social distancing. For our chemistry labs, we've purchased already 1,000 face shields to protect students, because of the difficulty of wearing masks with goggles can lead to the masks fogging up. And so we've decided to use face shields for students in those courses. We're going to have what we're calling a shared responsibility for sanitizing at the end of classes. It's going to be necessary, and we're not going to be talking about it in this town hall, but we're putting a substantial effort into making sure that our classrooms are safe and that they're sanitized after each class. And that responsibility is only going to partially fall on custodial staff. It will also fall on faculty and students to make sure that we have a safe learning environment. Because of social distancing, we will have reduced bus capacity, 50%. All of our vehicles will be at 50% capacity as a means of implying social distancing, and there'll be a variety of other requirements associated with that, which is going to make some of our field labs much more difficult to carry out. We're doing our best to figure out how we will be able to do that. Some of that will be virtual, but we're doing our best to make sure that students have the opportunity to learn the field skills that so many people want. Finally, a lot of our advising and other activities, orientation, a whole host of activities that have normally been face-to-face will now have to go virtual. You're either working through Blackboard Live or Zoom or other techniques. We will be having to provide some distance between faculty and students, because frankly, for many of our faculty, their offices are too small to handle face-to-face advising. But we'll see. But we will still require advising. We didn't require it this spring, but we are going to go back to required advising when we do registration for spring semester. So those are the main things that I wanted to let you know about. Like I say, I'm sure that you have many questions about what we're planning, and we'll answer as many of those questions as we can. So thank you very much, Stephanie.
All right. Yeah, thank you, David. And we are monitoring the chat feature and email, and we will get to those questions. But first, let's hear from Amelia about academic support opportunities on campus this fall. Amelia?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everybody who's tuned in. My name is Amelia Hoffman, and I am the Academic Success Coordinator here at ESF. And I just wanted to say I'm very excited to share with you some of the new opportunities that we have as far as academic support is concerned on campus, and trying to help you meet your needs and find success in whatever way possible this fall. Online education actually affords students a variety of really deep learning options. So I wanted to start off by saying, it's really important for us to reframe our understanding of what online education means. It allows us to look at videos multiple times and review that material. So there's a lot of really cool things that technology allows us to do, and blended with the power of our teaching faculty, I think it really unlocks a lot of potential. So if you're thinking, I'm really worried going into the fall about what this might mean for me, I just want you to think of all the possibilities. So with that being said, I also want to share with you that this fall, we will be offering free peer tutoring services virtually. So if you've ever gone to the Writing Resource Center and used their online portal, we will be transitioning our services over to that same portal. So all of our tutoring will be online synchronous. So you will be meeting with your tutor virtually, weekly, and we'll offer a couple different options for how you can seek that service. We offer a variety of different course options, usually over 45 different courses. So just know that we're trying to meet you in whatever capacity to just make sure that you can find success in the fall. We know that it's been very challenging. I also just wanted to say thank you so much to all of our peer tutors. If any of you are tuned in, this spring we were able to offer 414 hours of virtual service, and it actually worked out relatively well. So I just wanted to thank them for that. They're a really wonderful resource here. One of the benefits of using WC Online as our platform is that it offers a lot of flexibility as far as scheduling is concerned. It also has integrated email and text reminders, so if you're sitting in your residence hall room and you aren't really prepared for your appointment, you'll get a text message reminder that says, hey, in 15 minutes you have a tutoring session, and you can tune right in wherever you are. It also has an integrated video and chat features, so you can engage in multiple different ways with your tutor. So just know that that will be rolled out. You might see it in your orientation guide that we'll be handing out, or through our email communications to the campus once those services become available. The other thing I wanted to talk about is academic coaching services that we offer. We provide one-on-one academic coaching for all students regardless of their major or their class year, or whether they're online or in person. But this year we will be offering virtual appointments for our students, and when you meet one-on-one, we're really able to tailor your academic program to whatever it is that you feel like you need in that moment. So we address multitudes of different issues regarding your academics, so things like time management and organization, stress management, study skills and test preparation, motivation and procrastination, as well as note-taking and a lot of other life issues that you might have that are a struggle for you to meet your academic demands. But just know that we're here to support you and serve you, and we're going to try and do whatever we can to give you the absolute best service possible.
Thank you. All right, so that was really super helpful, Amelia. We appreciate that. And as I said, we have been getting some questions in the chat. So let's start with a question that comes from Lily that says, I am an out-of-state student. Will I be able to get reduced tuition if all of my classes are online?
Okay, there's been a lot of question on this, and I don't have a perfect answer for you yet. And here's the way to look at this. There are some students who are questioning whether they can just take the whole semester on, if their courses work out, that they could do the whole semester online and not come to campus at all, and basically stay home and do their semester there. We haven't made a final decision on that. We will have that decision by early next week, and that will be fully announced. My expectation is more than likely that we're going to end up having that as an option for students, but we're not certain of that. If we do, there is in-state students still would pay their same price for a course. Out-of-state students, if they do not come into New York State in order to take their course, would probably have a reduced tuition rate, but we haven't determined that yet.
So Amelia, just one quick question. We wondered, is there any contact information that you want to share with people?
Sure, absolutely. We have a lot of different ways that you can get in contact with our office. You can contact me directly, Amelia Hoffman, at aghoffma@esf.edu. If you have questions that are specific towards ESF tutoring services, you can email esftutoring@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram at ESF Tutoring, as well as on our Spotify channel. We have curated study playlists that are collaborative with the community, so find us at ESF Academic Success Center. And then also this year we will be creating a variety of different academic skills-based video content to be available on our new YouTube channel. So stay tuned, and as those roll out, we will be sure to email them to the campus.
Thank you. Okay, another question where people are wondering if there will be a contingency plan if the virus gets worse. David, you want to take that one?
Sure. If the virus gets worse, we are in weekly to daily contact with Upstate Medical, with Syracuse University, and with the county health department, which is essentially the arm of the state health department. And a lot of decisions that we might make are going to be based on decisions that come down to us, particularly from the county and the state. We're going to be very watchful. We're going to be doing testing and monitoring of activities, and I can't predict the future. Is there a likelihood that we will have students who get the virus? Yeah, there is, because that's the world we're in right now. We have plans for quarantining students. We have a variety of options that are open to us, but whether the campus closes down or not we hope not, but we just can't say. The things that have been going on around the country over the last few weeks have caused a lot of concern for a lot of people, and we're trying to work our way through that. Our objective, like I said, our priority was to be able to create a residential campus for students, but if that is compromised by other priority of maintaining health and safety, that will triumph.
Thank you. Okay, staying with you, there's a question, how have you factored in grad instructor preferences for teaching modes?
Well, this is a complicated question. We're not asking grad students to do anything different than we would expect faculty members to do, but there are components of positions that they're going to have to weigh in their decision making. If we're going to have face-to-face labs, and we're doing this with as much safety and precaution as we can do, we will, if a grad student says, I refuse to do that because I'm concerned about my health, and I get it, I still need somebody to be able to handle that TA responsibility. And so we would have to work something out between the instructor and the grad student. This one is challenging because there are some specific activities that are needed. So again, this is going to be in negotiation between the graduate student and the faculty member who has the class. With respect to additional responsibilities with regards to cleaning up of the lab, that is not all going to fall onto the TA. It's going to be the responsibility of the TA, but also the students and all people in the classroom to make sure that the classrooms are left in a safe condition.
Thank you. Okay, so the next one is also for you, David. Is there a deadline when enrolled students will be notified if their classes become hybrid, and what days of the week they will be on campus so students can update work schedules?
I've allowed faculty to keep on determining the modality that they're planning to teach at. I will have that, the due date is this Friday. Next week, we will be posting the modalities for all of our courses, or at least all the modalities that we have, so people will be able to check that and see what courses the plan is for each of the courses that they're taking.
Okay, thank you. So will grad students have all the same options as undergrads? I'm not sure what options are talking about, but
Yeah, I
that's
saw that question. I wasn't sure either. Again, with regards to the manner in which courses are taught, I mean, if we're talking about the potential for having an online-only program, it depends on their coursework. I mean, right now, not all of our courses are going to have an online component. That might change, but right now that is not the case. And so grad students, especially if they have a GA, they have responsibilities on campus, and if those responsibilities cannot be met through telecommuting, they're going to have to be on campus.
Okay, so Amelia, this one would be for you. How does EFS plan on providing mental health counseling and services, as well as academic flexibility regarding all of the social and political turmoil that is negatively impacting student well-being?
Okay. So if I understand that question correctly, it was just about the availability of counseling services. And as Dean Lombard has addressed in the chat, counseling services will be available to students as well as crisis walk-in hours. So we felt it was really important to maintain that service. I personally consider it a core academic success service. Knowing what's going on in our nation right now on multiple fronts, it's going to be even more important that students see their mental health as a priority, as do we. So making sure that you're reaching out for those support services early. Please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions that you might have about that, but just know that that's really tantamount to anything else.
Thank you. So there are a couple questions in here about work-study. Someone's wondering if work-study jobs will be available on campus, and there's also a second question I saw about work-study that says whether or not they'd be able to be done remotely.
Yes, there will be work-study. We receive federal funding for that, and our objective is to spend that funding. If the work can be done remotely, it can be done remotely. If it can't be done remotely, then we can't. There were special situations that occurred last spring with regards to funding of activities. This year, if work cannot be done remotely, we can't pay for people to not do that work. But yes, there will be work study.
Okay, so will registration be opened before the first day of classes so we can change our schedules if needed?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Let me see here. Another question, if we were to shut down, would we attempt to keep labs in person?
Yeah, I saw that question. That's a good question. Again, last spring, we didn't have a choice. We were ordered to shut down, and that's what we did. We thought we would have more flexibility, but we really didn't, and so we basically shut down the campus. I think we would have to see how things play out in the fall as to if in fact the virus started up again in our community, how exactly we would handle it. And because there's a variety of ways that this could play out. We would try and keep as much of our contact as we could. Fortunately, the situation for international students is now not quite as grave as it was just a couple days ago, where they had to have face-to-face courses in order to stay in the country. But we will do our best to work with our students to again, to keep them safe. If we have to close the campus down, we will. If we don't, we will try not to.
Okay, thank you. I'm also seeing some questions about Moon Hall, wondering the availability of Moon Hall and whether there will be additional study space open other than Moon Hall.
So Moon Library is a challenge for us. I've been in discussions with Matt Smith, the librarian, and basically we've gone from a capacity of about 250 spaces in Moon Library down to about 120. And so this will in fact be a real challenge for students. We're looking at the other potential spots in which students can have access to Wi-Fi if their courses are online while being on campus. But the library is going to be significantly reduced in its capability to service as many students as it has in the past.
Can you discuss testing a little bit? There are some questions in here about testing.
Testing will be online and will be done, I presume, in a manner that was done this past spring. And as such, they'll be offered on set days in the standard way that testing has always been done. The only difference is it won't be on-campus testing. And so that will be the way that we're going to do it.
Thank you. Question about internships being able to get employed after graduation. Is there anything about career services you might be able to address?
What I would say is that if you have questions about internships or any of your career outcomes, I would highly recommend contacting Career Services directly. You can contact John Turbyville, who's the Director of Career Services, Jennifer Fazio, who is our Internship and Experience Coordinator, and then also Casey Duffy, who's one of our career advisors. So they'll be able to link you up with our service through Handshake, which has a lot of our online job postings that students access, and there's still opportunities available, so those really haven't stopped. But if you are concerned about kind of your career or what options you might have, definitely reach out and ask any questions that you have.
Thank you. So it looks like we have some people from the Ranger School on here. They're wondering if the Ranger School will operate. Will those classes be online or in person, as the campus is much smaller?
Well, as many of you know, or most of you should know, the Ranger School actually was weathered the spring and maintained their program all last spring and with face-to-face courses. We feel very strongly that because of the Ranger School's isolation, that we can do that again. So the plan for the Ranger School is that all their courses will be done face-to-face. We are going to, again, be limiting student movement to try and maintain a safe environment. They'll be working off pretty much the same schedule that the main campus is. They'll be starting a few days earlier and also ending on November 24th. So the plan right now is that Ranger School will be as close to normal, whatever normal now means, as ever.
Okay. So this question, some of these questions I think are getting a little bit into the health and safety aspects, which we will be addressing in the next town hall. But this question here is talking about, is asking about how we're planning on reducing contact between students in hallways, especially when getting out of classes and waiting to get into the lecture rooms.
It's one we don't have a good answer for yet. Our hallways are not really designed for one-way delivery. But we may end up having to do that. That's one of the things that we're still trying to decide how we would do that. So I guess what I would say is right now, we're again, expectation, students will be wearing masks at all time, and trying to maintain social distancing. We're hoping, my hope is, and I haven't fully discussed this with faculty yet, but that faculty members would stop their classes maybe 5 minutes early to allow for spraying down the area. The disinfectant that we have requires about 10 minutes of sitting before it's wiped away. And so if a faculty member could end their course about 5 minutes earlier, it would give more time for that. Hopefully that would allow for a little bit more evening out of the flow and less congestion between classrooms. But I know down in Baker between classrooms, this is going to be a real challenge.
Okay. So there's a really important question here from someone submitted. Are we better off suspending our academic plans until all of this blows over? Should we take a semester or a year off? Your thoughts on that, David?
Well, if there were good alternatives, it's something that would be considered. Travel is going to be limited. Work is going to be limited. I think it's an important time for students to be learning, to be getting training for when the situation does go back to a more normal situation. I understand the fears that are out there. This is scary stuff. People are dying, and what our hope here is, and really our belief is that our students can be mature enough to understand that there's a social good here, and behave in ways that would minimize the risks associated with the virus, wearing masks, keeping social distance, paying attention, helping in terms of disinfecting. All these things are trying to make for a safe environment. The learning outcomes that we have for our courses are not changing. And whether the course is taught primarily online, whether it's a flex method or face-to-face, we believe that the learning outcomes will be met. So obviously students will make decisions that they feel are best for themselves. Would I recommend taking a year off at this time because of this? I actually wouldn't. I think, this delays. Let me put it this way. If you had some really good alternatives, I would think that might not be a bad idea. But if you don't have really good alternatives that are going to be better than what coming to campus would be, I would come to campus.
Thank you. So Lily wrote in and said, what about Cuomo shutting down public schools yesterday? Has that affected any of ESF's plans?
It hasn't, because it just came down yesterday, and he hasn't shut down all the schools. He's telling administrators that they have to think about their own situations. There is a difference between a public K through 12 school and a college, and the obvious difference is we're dealing with more mature individuals who hopefully can understand the importance of wearing masks, of providing social distance. And secondly, they're not in the same classroom for six to 8 hours at a time. They're in relatively shorter spurts, 50 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes. And again, a lot of our courses is going to be online. And so where people are going to be in a classroom setting, they're going to be in relatively much smaller numbers and with more ease of social distancing. In the labs where there is concern about the difficulty of maintaining social distancing. We're going to be reducing density in labs by at least 50%. And so we believe that that is a very, very different situation than trying to work with, 30 third graders in a classroom. It's just a very, very different situation. So what the governor has done has been primarily aimed at K through 12. He hasn't been talking about colleges and universities.
Thank you. So Rosemarie, let's get to your question. Can commuters who live with immunocompromised parents, or I assume anyone, have flexibility in terms of whether they prefer online or on-campus classes?
That's why we're going to be putting out that information. And in terms of what the modalities of courses are going to be. And we will do our best to, if that is what a student needs, that's what we'll do. But at the same time, there are courses right now that are being planned for face-to-face. And if those are a course that you have to take, we're going to have to make some much harder decisions.
So Sean, thank you for your question. He is wondering if commuters will increase the possibility of spreading the virus, ES to families and families back to ESF.
Well, about 3/4 of our students live off campus and are living in the community. And so it isn't just commuters, it's people living in the university neighborhoods. And it is one of our big concerns. Syracuse University is coming out with some fairly strong expectations on students with regards to off-campus behavior. Again, we're doing our best to provide a safe environment. And this is something that people are just going to have, you have to go to the grocery store, you have to go to a variety of places where these types of situations can occur. Our promise is that we will be transparent. As we have information about health issues, we will share that with the campus community. We are not going to be hiding things.
So Julia has a question about tests. I think she means tests during the academic year in class. She's wondering if normal tests will be online as well, or are those going to be decided by each professor?
The conduct of an individual class is up to the professor. They will make decisions about how classes are to be run. But we won't be changing our social distancing guidelines even if it's an exam. So professors are going to have to think their way through how they would be doing those things.
So Hannah's looking for criteria that will be used to determine when a campus needs to be shut down again. Is it 5 infected, 100 infected? What's the first?
That's going to come from the Department of Health. We're not setting that guideline. Right now, the guidelines that have been set is if the testing rate is below 5% positive, then things can be open. If it's over 5%, things would start closing down. Right now, New York State is about 1%. And so, I believe pretty strongly that's not going to be in our hands to determine. That'll be determined by the county public health and the governor.
So can you talk a little bit about, and I'm not sure either of you, how students who have one face-to-face class and then the very next class is online, how they have options of attending both in a timely way?
So again, we have less space for people to have access to Wi-Fi for that next course. What I would say is our students are pretty creative in finding places to study, and that they will have to do that. I'm not sure how often that's going to be the case where you're dealing with one right after the other. It depends on people's schedules. again, we are doing our best to try and come to some solutions that can work. We will be increasing Wi-Fi access on the campus, and that could provide some additional options for students.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I think you would make sure those options accommodate students who have to get to SU for a class too?
Yes.
Yes, right, okay. So, Amelia, some questions are focusing on the idea about helping students work well in a virtual environment. Do you
Sure.
have thoughts for that?
Sure. So we have some tips for kind of how you might want to prepare yourself for the online environment. First, really just start preparing early, collect all of your course syllabi, and make sure that you read them. All of your instructors are going to lay out their expectations for the course, so it's really important that you use that as your primary guide for what it is that you need to be preparing for or what materials you're going to need for the course. And don't be afraid to ask questions. So if you're working through the syllabus and you have a question about something or you're really not sure, ask your faculty. They're going to be more than willing to help you. Try to ensure that you also have the technology that you need in order to be successful. I know Dean Lombard also addressed in the chat that we have a loan program for some computers if you have technological or connectivity issues, and we're going to make sure that you have access to that technology. So that information will be forthcoming as we approach the fall. So if you have, computer or a webcam or a microphone, a variety of those materials, we'll have some specifications that we'll lay out as far as, updating your computer with the proper software. Again, checking your syllabus and making sure that you have what it is that you need in order to be able to connect is important. But we also know that this is new for everyone too, and you might not have that. So, we're going to try to work with you and make sure that you have access to everything that you need. This was already kind of touched on, but creating and cultivating a study space it's going to be very critical for you. Making sure that you have a comfortable environment, whether that's in where you sleep in your room, or if it's finding a space on campus that you can go to kind of in between your classes. Since a lot of classes will be online, the campus will be de-densified, therefore finding space on campus might not be quite as difficult as you might think. But again, we're going to try to find out more about what spaces will be available, and I will make sure to generate a list so that way, if you're wondering about a variety of study spaces, we'll try to figure out ones that are available for you. And the last thing is try to understand your why you decided to come to ESF in the first place. When you're feeling unmotivated, or if you're feeling kind of nervous about what this means to your life or your education, it's important to kind of go back to those foundational principles of why you wanted to go into this major in the first place. So reminding yourself of those reasons can really help motivate you and can help you overcome some of those obstacles. If it's okay, can I address another question that was in the chat?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I also saw that a few students had some concerns about access to other mental health counseling services, and it's my understanding that there will at least be some level of telemental health counseling. But again, the counseling center really is on a short-term basis. So, there's only so much capacity for the campus, and we believe it's absolutely important that students have access to that. However, creating relationships with longer-term providers is also a sustainable solution because we want to make sure that students get the level of mental health care that they need. But with that being said, the staff is willing to work and customize a plan for the students just to make sure that they can get that service. So if you have any questions, you can always contact Counseling Services. The director, Ruth Larson, is working over the summer, so feel free to reach out with any questions.
Thank you. Great advice. So a question came back to the conversation that you had about buses, and the gentleman is wondering if we could relax transportation restrictions to field labs on a case-by-case basis. I don't know if maybe you want to talk about why you've put the policies in place, practices.
So, again, this is guidance that's come to us with regards to transportation. If it's less than 15 minutes, there can be a little bit more relaxation of it. But, you know, for trips out to Heiberg, that's a longer than 15-minute trip. We're putting a number of restrictions with regards to buses. All students who ride on buses will have surgical masks that we will provide for them when they get on the bus. They will be in assigned seating. So there are just a lot of limitations that have been placed on us and that we are placing on in order to ensure safety on these bus rides. All campus vehicles will be operating at 50% capacity. And so the short answer to the question is no, we're not going to modify it. I would love to modify it. I have faculty who would love to modify it because it would make their lives easier. But in fact, this is what we're going to do. You know, we've gotten this guidance and we're going to keep with it until we're told differently.
Understood. Thank you. So another question that comes up wonders about what students will do if they get sick, or maybe if they just need to be isolated or quarantined for a little bit. Are there any support systems in place to allow them to continue taking their classes at their own pace?
Yeah, and I've already told faculty about this, that if a student has to go into quarantine or other things, that they have to be able to maintain their program, as they would in pretty much any situation. If a student were to come down with, you know, last year, if they would have come down with the flu, they would work with their faculty member, their instructor, as to what was going to happen within the course and how they could maintain their standing in the course. And so for some of our courses which are online, this shouldn't present any problems at all. For labs, this may create a little bit more difficulty, but we were able to work through our labs last spring. So my expectation is if somebody gets sick, the key here is that the student needs to inform their instructor as to what's going on so that the instructor can work with them to make sure that they don't fall behind the class. The responsibility is not a one-way trip on this. Students have to be engaged with their instructors to let them know their situations. Again, for an online course or for a hybrid flex course, this becomes much simpler to deal with, and there shouldn't be it shouldn't create huge problems. But if there are a significant number of face-to-face courses that the student has, then it does become more of a concern, and you just have to be in contact with your instructor.
Great, thank you. So wondering if you can provide any more information about the landscape architecture students. Do you know how many of their classes will be face-to-face or hybrid? If you have any of that information.
Almost all of their courses are going to be hybrid. Again, they have this, even though the student numbers in landscape architecture are somewhat smaller, they still have small classrooms in a fairly broad open space. And so most of the courses, as has been planned, are to be in a hybrid flex.
Understood. So in terms of the academic calendar, will there be weekend classes, and what's the plan to shorten the semester and still fit in all the material that has to be covered?
There are only three weekend classes, Saturday, September 5th, Sunday, October 25th, and Sunday, November 8th, I think are the days, something like that. I said that at the beginning. But other than that, there are not plans for direct weekend classes. Some of the programs have been looking at potential for Saturday labs because they have to run more labs of fitting them in. So I believe that that the biology, the Gen Bio course is planning on some Saturday labs. But other than that, we're not planning on weekend courses. And we hit the number of contact hours in order for the courses to count. So we're okay on that.
What about any consideration for this being a pass-fail semester again?
No. We've already decided that it will not be pass-fail. We did pass-fail because of this huge disruption that occurred this past spring. We're not planning on this disruption occurring again. And so right now, there is no plan for pass-fail. And again, as it turned out, the pass-fail option was it wasn't heavily subscribed, and where it was subscribed, it was, to be honest, to Chem 2 and to Bio 2. Those were the two courses that had the most students who went to a pass-fail option. And we actually had an awful lot of students after the fact wish they hadn't. And so this is too much of a burden to be placing on the registrar. And so we've made a decision that we will not be using the pass-fail option this year.
Another question about field labs. Will you allow students to drive themselves or carpool?
Well, I can't carpool because we would be wanting to work in a 50% level of cars. This one's going to be up to the instructor. Historically, we haven't allowed that because of in fact, the greater risks that individuals driving themselves brings. And often we're going to areas in which there isn't sufficient parking. But that one ultimately will be up to the instructor and the department chairs to make that final decision.
So if in the event that a student does contract the virus, do you anticipate that they would have to take an incomplete?
It depends. Again, I've known people, and I don't know a lot of people who have contracted the virus, but I do know some people who have contracted the virus. They went into quarantine, but they were they were asymptomatic. It didn't affect them in such a way that they wouldn't have been able to complete a course if the course is already online. And so I think it's going to depend on the courses that the student is taking and whether they're in a situation where they feel they can complete the course or whether they feel they need to take an incomplete. I don't think anybody can give a blanket statement on that because we just don't know.
Okay, I think we may be coming down to the end. I see one other question on here. Some of these questions, as I mentioned before, we will address in upcoming town halls. We have a town hall coming up on health and safety issues. We also have a town hall coming up on finance issues. But there's another question here. You've mentioned a couple times, David, up to the instructor, and looking for some clarification on that. Do you mean the faculty running the course, or are you talking about the grad instructor who would be the grad instructor?
The instructor I mean is the instructor who the faculty member who's responsible for the course. They work with their grad teaching assistants in terms of working to maintain safety. If there are issues that arise, we will work on them. We're not asking any individual to take on undue risks. And so, I mean, our presumption, again, is that we are working to try and maintain the health and safety of everybody involved. Faculty, TAs, students, staff. That's our objective, and we're not trying to compromise anybody or put anybody into an awkward situation. We are asking, though, that people have to be consider the health and welfare of others in their classroom. Students are going to be expected to wear masks. If they don't wear masks, they're not going to be allowed in the classroom. Those types of decisions. If people are violating social distancing, we will have to deal with these. These are going to be college policy, not just student behavior policy. These are college policy, and so we're expecting everybody to be realistic in their behavior, given the situation that we're in.
Okay. So David, I'm not sure why, but there is a request that you answer the pass-fail question again.
No. No, there will not be pass-fail. Frankly, I mean, that has never been ESS policy. We never allowed pass-fail. And it was an option that was placed before us before we had satisfactory, unsatisfactory, which is different from pass-fail. And that was only for seminar courses generally. The pass-fail option was put forward by SUNY, and we adopted it because of the extreme situation that we found ourselves in this past March. We're planning now, and so the expectation is there will be no pass-fail option.
Okay. So another question has come in, a couple more are still coming in now. If a student has hybrid or face-to-face courses and tests positive, they're curious if it's going to be up to the instructor if they are accommodated. I think they want assurance that they'll be provided with the material while they're in quarantine.
I have told faculty that if a student goes into quarantine, that they have to make accommodations to be able to help that student through the course. Does that mean that the course would immediately go online? No, it doesn't. Because in fact, that would be an undue burden to be placed on a faculty member. However, again, we are looking at the possibility, and I still have to talk with the chairs about this. I have to talk with the executive cabinet about this, of allowing for full online options for students. I don't want to do away with face-to-face courses. I think that would be a real negative implication on the college and on why a lot of people choose to come to this college. We believe that we can do this safely, and that is our plan. If a student becomes sick with the virus, it will be up to the faculty member to work with that student to allow them to be in a situation that they can still continue the course, whether it be sharing the lecture notes, other things that are commonly done for students who become incapacitated and have difficulties with courses. So, but ultimately, that will come down to the individual faculty and what they will do.
Thank you. So I've noticed that we've had a lot of questions from grad students on here, and I just want to reassure everyone there will be a town hall, at least one town hall specific to graduate students. We're working to finalize that date, and just as soon as we get that finalized, we will get that out to everybody. I think another question that's shown up, David, I'm not sure if there's anything you can say about this. There are a couple questions wondering about DPS and their ability to patrol, monitoring off-campus activity.
No, they don't. I mean, our campus police are responsible on this campus, and they don't patrol the neighborhoods. That's Syracuse Police Department.
Okay, all right. Questions continue to come in about landscape architecture. I think we may have addressed that. Is there more you want to add?
The move is taking place this week. All the equipment from Marshall Hall is being moved to 224 Baker, or Harrison Street. for the landscape architecture students, I know that their chair, Doug Johnson, has been in contact with them. I believe he has, about how things will be done there. It's going to be an adventure. I mean, this is really different, and it was one of these things where we flat out didn't have a choice. If Marshall was going to be brought up to reasonable quality, we had to shut it down for what's going to work out to about 2.5 years. And so we had to find an alternative spot for landscape architecture to go. I think the space down on Harrison Street is really pretty spectacular, but it is going to be challenging. We're working on transport systems to get people there. Evening parking, we have lots of that. During the day parking, we have, we don't provide permit parking generally for students in any case. And so people will have to work on that. But we are working with Upstate, which has a shuttle service that goes down Harrison Street, and so we will be providing transportation to and from Harrison Street to students. And again, lots of parking in the evening, less parking during the day.
Okay, so there's a question that's been posted twice about protests on and off campus, and how will ESF do quarantine for students who participate in these, if that's necessary? I'm not sure we've discussed that.
We haven't discussed that. I mean, we have expectations on students being cautious because of community welfare. Protesting is an important right that students have, and we have no doubt that students will engage in that. We're going into a political year. Tensions are going to be high. There's a lot of things going on. What we would expect if students are going to participate in something like that, they wear masks, they use social distancing. We're not planning on quarantining students if they go off campus. We can't do that. And so all we're expecting is that students are going to use good judgment.
Okay, so another question came from Angie. Does everyone have the option to stay home, be safe, and still be a full-time student? Will every teacher have a remote modality option for their course?
Right now, no. That may change.
Okay, so the question about ventilation, I think, is one that we would address in another town hall, so we will get to that one. We've talked a little bit about accommodations for students that need to be made, if we need to make accommodations for students because of quarantine? Yes? Okay. All right. And then just a follow-up question about UPD. Will they be patrolling Harrison Street building? Do they have jurisdiction in Centenn? And asking because neither of those are state property.
We now have jurisdiction in Centennial Hall, so University Police or College Police will have responsibility there. We're working with the owner of 224 Harrison with respect to security, and we're paying a lot of attention to security questions there. But it will not be campus police for that.
Do we know that all instructors are being taught how to use Blackboard?
They all have the capability of doing it. We've provided a lot of training opportunities for our faculty, and most have taken advantage of it.
Okay, so for students coming from quarantine states, do parents have to quarantine if they move their child in, or can they leave after they move in?
They can leave after they move in.
Okay.
If they're just passing through the state, they don't have to quarantine. The students will have to quarantine, though.
Okay. There's a question here about moving into Centenn and what that will look like, and I think we should probably address that in a future one.
There are going to be a lot of discussions about for students moving into Centennial Hall. There will be other either Facebook or Instagram chats on that.
So we will get some town hall questions in an upcoming one. I think, unless you're seeing something I'm not, I think we may have touched on all of the questions in at least some way. And again, please know that we will go back through the questions, and if there were some that we didn't get in real time today, we will make sure that we get you the answers. I think if we all feel good, now might be a good time to wrap up. Amelia, anything else you want to add?
No, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. You have my email, and if you need anything, please don't hesitate.
Okay, all right. So we've mentioned this a couple times, but please know that there are future town halls scheduled. We'll continue to promote them via your email. So we send communication to students' email addresses. We'll also promote them via the college's social channels. The next one will be on July 29th, and as we've mentioned, it will talk about health and safety issues so that we can address COVID-19 concerns and what we're doing to do our best to make campus as safe as possible. Thank you all for joining us, and we're all looking forward to seeing you soon.